Acquisitions are often a graveyard of failed dreams. It's not the fact they didn't close. Closing the deal is often celebrated, and so it should. But I'm talking about beyond the deal, talking about the deals that close but never deliver the value forecast in the business case. We really are terrible at doing acquisitions as a general rule. The research is just overwhelming in terms of its consistency. 60, 70, 90% of deals, depending on which research source, claim that the deal has been a failure as measured by the original objectives. So let me take a minute, or about 8 minutes actually, to compare acquirers that are getting it right and the mistakes I see that acquirers are doing and getting it wrong. I'm going to take two specific populations. I'm going to compare the private equity players who support their portfolio companies in their acquisition trail. And I'm going to compare that with a public company and a smaller public company, let's say. I'm just going to highlight, hopefully, to add a bit of value to these processes, I'm going to highlight what goes right and what goes wrong. I'm going to start with the private equity players, first of all. So, some of these comparisons may seem a little bit extreme, but I think they make the point. And I can back any of these points up with my own experience / the research. So let's take a private equity player. When a middle market private equity player doubles down on their investment and supports the management to grow inorganically, by acquisition, in other words, a little bit of magic starts to happen. Let's summarize what that looks like. So first of all, the management team that stayed with the business is now inspired to execute their strategy much quicker by not just organic moves, but also by acquisition. Because the PE firm trusts the team, the quality of the M&A ideas are much, much better. Often these ideas will be kicked around the boardroom prior to selling out the private equity player, but they were deemed too risky on the family's sort of corporate balance sheet. Because the PE firm recognizes the quality of the management team, they are more than happy to allow them to shine their operational competence into the acquisition process by evaluating targets, because they've got the knowledge of the sector in detail, and they know all the players and they know all the personalities. Additionally, to add to that, the private equity firms have their own skill set, analytical skills, financial skills, often market assessment skills that can collaborate symbiotically with the local team to execute the deal. So it's quite a combo. And also because the portfolio company management team know they have to run the business post-acquisition, they are laser-like focused on the post-acquisition integration plan. Can we really say that about public companies? So these are the kind of things that I think stand out to me when I look at a private equity firm and how they approach acquisitions. They just lean on the local team who know the sector often better than the PE partners. The local team are smart. They can measure talent, systems, NPS, KPIs, competitive value propositions. They intrinsically know what this acquisition will do in terms of enhancing their capability. Every aspect of the acquisition process, and we have a very strong acquisition process here, the portfolio partnership, but a classic process will involve assessing targets, of course, understanding the targets, calibrating that value, negotiating the most appropriate deal, inspiring the sellers to stay on, post-acquisition planning, and of course, making the deal a success. These are the aspects that the local player with private equity support can do well. And remember, the management team selling out to a private equity firm will often retain a minority stake, and that could well be worth more than the original majority stake they sold out. And remember, with a private equity firm, you actually get to test the quality of their deals because they're going to sell that portfolio company one day, and they will measure the internal rate of return of that. And so there's kind of almost a test of how good the deal was. So the test isn't at completion. The test is further down the line, as it should be. Now, if we take public company acquirers, I'm going to, again, perhaps be a little bit extreme in this comparison, but I'm telling you, these things have happened in practice in front of me. So I'm sharing something I've seen, not something I've just read about. But the CEO often, these are the worst traits. Number one, the CEO is a deal maker. Probably he or she's come from an investment banking background, and they love the chase. They're rarely involved, and they rarely get the operational management team involved. And which is sad because the operational management team are the ones that are going to run the business. Post-acquisition planning is left way too late in the process, just before the due diligence plan is put together, instead of on page 2 or 3 at the front end. The strategy is well articulated, but deal pipelines are heavily influenced by what is for sale and often delivered by investment banks selling stuff. The deal leader lacks often a lack of empathy. They haven't built a $50 million business, and so they don't understand what the fuss is all about, or what's so special about this target company, which it shows in meetings. The corporate development team are also very smart, but they've never held the CEO or COO position or CFO position. Some will, obviously, but I'm just saying in general, they often don't. They come up through investment banking, and they've not developed what we would call operator muscles. And that's like asking an accountant to design the next Aston Martin. It just doesn't make sense. And the lack of sort of knowledge of the sector, sometimes they expand into areas and overstretch themselves with limited knowledge. Case study, sadly, would be the acquisition strategy of SDL in the customer experience space, where they expanded into areas that really had limited knowledge of and lost their original translation business, lost its way. Lack of operational experience bites acquirers sometimes as they assess the economics and the guts of a business. Another example might be the acquisition of Autonomy, a UK software company, by HP. A disaster by many measures. So the precision, also, if you look at the precision that an acquirer like a public company brings to hiring people, is often quite comprehensive. That seems to be thrown out the window when it comes to acquisitions in terms of onboarding 100 new employees or 1,000 new employees. The assessment of culture is often rushed, it's chaotic, and it misses the point. And this would never be accepted in a formal interview process. The acquisition team is often missing the skill sets that are required in terms of probing and understanding the seller's dreams, the seller's drivers, and the seller's emotional kind of source code. Trust is often not developed with the sellers in the initial stages of the deal process. And this has a bad consequence in the final negotiations on price and structure, because without trust, many of the tools of negotiation are worthless. The post-acquisition plan is often never driven with that openness and collaboration in mind. Instead of work streams containing both members of both sides, there's a big brother kind of we know best mentality. And finally, probably the most damning consequence Unlike the PE illustration, public company HQ teams don't really throw themselves at helping divisional CEOs expand and build a much bigger business. They're often or too often left alone until, say, an annual strategic review when they expect some magic to happen. Again, compare that with private equity guys. So we need to get better at acquiring companies and successfully integrating them. There will always be risks, but deploying a rigorous playbook and driving process through an operator mindset, we can increase the odds of success. And it's that operator mindset that's the key, and the integration of each target is the key. So I hope that was helpful. And that's just a quick comparison. Check out our regular blog on the Portfolio Partnership website. Thanks for listening.